And welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I am joined here, as always, by the man who has never given up 7 goals in a Stanley Cup final game. Kyle, how are you doing?
I haven't done that, but I am doing good. How are you doing, sir?
Yes, doing good as well. You're basically better than Andre Vasilevsky.
You know what? Your brother's been saying he's overrated for years now. Maybe it's finally coming to fruition. Don't really think so, but I, still feel confident. Tampa Bay's got to feel okay still.
Yeah, we're doing all right. Maybe we'll touch on that more at the end. Got to get an intro somehow. In the offseason, it's tough to get those intros, Kyle. You really got to shoehorn some in.
Yeah, no, completely understand. We're talking 2022 football season though now. It is time.
I feel like this is officially the 2022 football season for the Jackson Kruger Sports YouTube channel and On the Sideline podcast. This episode right here, today, it has started right now, this minute.
It's almost like, when the cliche line in drafts is like, everyone knows who like the top pick's going to be. Oh, the picks start. The real draft starts at number 3. I'm hearing it now with the NBA draft. The draft really starts at number 4 with Sacramento. The real podcast offseason starts now. June 22nd. We're here. We're picking the NFC East.
Yes. NFC Beast, as we have in the chat. I'm sure some people will be saying NFC Least. And, listen, plenty of people are talking about the exciting divisions. The AFC South, I'm sure everyone's putting all the buzz in. We give credit to the little guys here, Kyle. We're going to be talking the NFC East, the division no one ever talks about. No one can watch their games because they're always on at 8 o'clock p.m. We're giving credit to the little teams here.
Yeah, classic underdog stories like the teams from New York, Philadelphia, and Dallas.
Small market teams.
Listen, this is not a popular division outside of the teams in the division because they are talked about a lot. They're mainstream teams, and you know what? I don't think this is quite the bottom feeder division that it has been in the years past. I think it's a little frisky. I almost put it 5th, but I have it as the 6th best division in football.
Moving up in the world.
Moving up. Now, if you say, okay, there's no Super Bowl contenders in this division, I might agree with you there. But at the same time, I don't think any of these teams are going to end up as the worst team in the league, where I feel like in years past, you could have looked at multiple teams vying for the worst team in the league position. I think at least all of these, if any of these teams win this division this year, I wouldn't be necessarily shocked. I think there'd be some that are surprising than others, but I wouldn't be shocked.
I would be shocked about one, and we'll get into that when we get there. I would be shocked. I think I have some hot takes here in this one, Kyle. I think this is one of the divisions that have more hot takes. I have one in particular that I think people are going to be surprised by, so that should be fun. Let me just set up how this show is going to work. So Kyle is going to give his rankings from 4 to 1. If you watched these last year, you know how this works, but we get new listeners all the time, which we appreciate. So just how it works. Kyle will say his 4th ranked team. I will then give kind of my extended rundown on the entire rosters, and I will be ranking each position group into tiers. There's a win total associated with each of these tiers based on previous history and how much that typically gives you win totals. And then from that, I will have a projected win total for the next year, and then we'll move on to 3 and so on and so forth. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. I'm in.
Yeah, also, we have someone in the chat saying Spicy Kruger making an appearance. Yeah, I like that. Spicy Kruger.
This is like when Wendy's brings out the spicy nuggets. Spicy Kruger just shows up. You need like a hat or something.
I feel like it's probably closer to like the McDonald's spicy nuggets that tasted like basically the exact same as the regular nuggets.
Oh, those are so bad.
Incredible. We could do a whole podcast on that. We will not. If you're a little bit confused about how this goes, you will understand it more once we get into it. You want to just get into it?
Let's dive into it.
Actually, let me do one more real quick because someone put this in the chat and I wanted to mention this. Hi, Jackson. Are you using the same win criteria from last offseason? I am not. I made a couple of slight adjustments. I don't know how many people care about this, but some do. I have made some slight adjustments to the almighty algorithm here. It seems like from what I've gone back, I think I overvalued running backs a bit too much last year. I have dialed that back down a lot to where a tier 1 running back room is now worth a little bit under 1 win. I've also added win totals to every defensive position. I did that because, more I've read about running backs. I feel like I've overvalued that, so I've dialed that back. Also, I noticed that in doing that, the offense got a little bit too overvalued. So I've just shifted the scales a little bit. Offense still matters more, but it matters kind of more of a fair amount now. So just again, slight correction, slight changes there if anyone's interested. Anyways, Kyle, why don't you go ahead with number 4?
All right, number 4 team in the division. As you said, I think there'd be one team that you were shocked by winning the division. I get the feeling that it's going to be the New York Giants. The New York Giants are introducing a new head coach. That's the first thing they got going against them. There are still questions around the roster, particularly this is a make or break season for quarterback Daniel Jones. I'll lay out the quick reasons for optimism here.
Okay.
We saw flashes from Daniel Jones. Even if they were small flashes, there were some flashes that he looked pretty good last season, I thought. Maybe he has this thing turned around. He's working with a coach who is kind of viewed as a quarterback guru right now in Brian Daboll. So maybe that works out for him. And then the last part of this is that there's going to be certain position groups that I think have to get better because they can't get any worse than they were last year. And also, this team, by Sharp Football Analytics, which I think has a good strength of schedule metric, has the easiest schedule in football next season. They have the easy. There are some tough games here. You got Green Bay at home. You got at Tennessee to start the season, but you also get Carolina at home. You're at Jacksonville, Seattle, which are pretty good road games that are easily winnable. You got Houston and Detroit at home. And so, I mean, you got winnable games across the schedule that you can look at and say, hey, maybe the Giants pick up a few of these wins, steal a couple other ones. All of a sudden, they're right there at the end of the season. The Giants are still 4th for me, though, just for talent deficiency. But I think there are reasons for slight optimism.
Okay, well, interesting. So let's just start off at the top, as we're going to do with all of these. The 2 most important people in each football team is going to be the quarterback and the head coach. Daniel Jones, I have as a tier 4 quarterback. He was 23rd on my rankings. And Brian Daboll loses value as well, being the 26th ranked head coach. A lot of it's just like he's new. He's a wild card. He could be better than that. Who knows? But I guess my concern I've talked about a little bit on this podcast with Daboll is, are we giving him potentially too much credit for what he did with Josh Allen? Josh Allen had a great turnaround, and he's the one who gets all the credit for that. But if you take that out of the equation, his resume is not very impressive. It really comes down to, is that because of him, or is it just because Josh Allen happened to figure stuff out? And if it's the latter, then this could actually end up being a pretty bad head coaching hire.
Yeah, I definitely think we can. And I think it's a lot harder to be a quarterback guy than be a head football coach. And the other part about this too is that, Josh Allen just might have more talent than Daniel Jones. Even if we, didn't like Josh Allen a whole lot his first couple of years, I still thought he showed a little more flashes than Daniel Jones. But yeah, I mean, all of that could go together. I don't know how it's going to work. And with these head coaches, it's kind of like, drawing straws to a certain degree. So we'll see what happens. But, part of my thing with Jones last year is, it wasn't all perfect. It wasn't all perfect all season. But I mean, going against New Orleans and having 400 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, that's not nothing. So maybe there is something here. I'm still a little more pessimistic about Jones than in his future, but at least you have a guy with a proven track record to try and pull this out, and you don't have a bad backup in Tyrod Taylor, who I think can do some things too. So we'll see what happens with the Giants. It's a make or break season for him.
Yeah, sure. There is. You're right. There is stuff to like about Daniel Jones. I thought that he did show flashes. I think he's underrated. I still don't think he's great though. The wide receiving core is another one that's this is kind of how, I guess, if you're going to say this team is going to vastly improve, this will probably be how it does it. You have Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney, who a lot got made of no touchdowns combined last year, but there's still a lot of potential there. Toney was a first-round pick, who some people even had as wide receiver number 1. Some crazy people said that. Kenny Golladay was also, he was the biggest wide receiver free agent that offseason, so there's a lot of potential there. They also drafted Wan'Dale Robinson in the 2nd round. And then you got guys like Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and Richie James, who could at least be depth, if nothing else. Tight end needs some work. Ricky Seals-Jones is probably their best option. He's on his 5th team in 5 years. So Jordan Atkins had potential and then really hasn't lived up to that. You also have 4th rounder Daniel Bellinger. So wide receiving core gets a tier 4 for me, but has potential to improve if some of these guys can step up like Golladay and Toney.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, it was so what? Sterling Shepard played 7 games last season, and he was viewed as a pretty good number 3 option. And so you have guys like him. Darius Slayton as a number 4 option, I don't think is bad. I kind of like Wan'Dale Robinson. So I think there's guys on this list that took I think by default this gets better because it was just so bad. But you also look at this and say, okay, there's talent here. And if they can figure this out and, not start Jake Fromm, then I think at the same time, this should be just a better group overall at wide receiver.
Yeah, should that be the first thing that they put on their game plan heading into next season? Don't start Jake Fromm.
Don't play Jake Fromm. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. To round out the offense, the halfbacks. So this might be a hot take. I'm giving this tier 4. I just haven't seen Saquon Barkley play enough, and I haven't seen him play consistently in several years. I'm going to bet against running backs that have injury histories. Matt Breida, I think, is solid as well. But again, there's too many good running backs out there for me to get too high on that. I know people will probably disagree, especially Giants fans, but I'm putting that as tier 4. Offensive line, I'm also putting at tier 4. I like Andrew Thomas a lot. Evan Neal should be a good day one player. And even Mark Glanowski, I think, can do well, from the Colts. He's a good guard, but it looks like their, other guard is either going to be Max Garcia or Shane Lemieux, who was a 5th round pick in 2020, excuse me. You also have John Feliciano at center, who, I feel like he's typically a guard. He hasn't shown a ton. There's some holes in this offensive line, and we still don't know what we're going to get out of Evan Neal right away. It could take him some time, like Andrew Thomas took some time. So tier 4 offensive line, tier 4 halfback. Everywhere in the offense, I give tier 4, giving it the 27th ranked offense on my board.
Yeah. I think I agree with all that. All of it's theoretical. I mean, there's nothing really you could say about Saquon to be super excited based off the last season. He was sub 4 yards a carry. He played 13 games, which I guess is good based on a guy with injury history, but
sure.
he got sub 200 carries in 13 games. That's not very good. I think it's like, so I guess the thing is, like, I agree with all your tier 4 grades, but like my thing with the Giants is, would I be shocked if all of this is tier 3? So like Saquon not coming off a season ending injury this season. So by default, you think he might be a little bit fresher. And also, this has the potential to be his best offensive line he runs behind his entire career. Short career. So maybe there's ways that gets better. Maybe the receivers, I think, should be better. And there might be a chance Jones is decent with Daboll at the helm. So I think it's all theoretical with the Giants is the problem. It's like theoretically this, and this can all get better. But the hope is all that gets better. Otherwise, you're starting from scratch next season, right?
Yeah. And the nice thing about, being a team that doesn't have a ton of talent is that you get to try new guys, and one of those guys might step up and play well. So we see that sometimes with, like the Lions, right? Where you got kind of like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, we were able to just put him in whatever position would work for him because of, we have no talent around him, and he actually showed some things, and now we can start to build. So to me, that's still where the Giants are at, though, as a rebuilding team.
Yeah, I think I agree. So I guess the thing is, what's the most likely scenario for this offense to get better? Is it that Tony is healthy and looks awesome?
Yeah, it's that Tony and Golladay go back to what we expected, become what we expected them to be. I think Evan Neal lives up to the hype, and then Daniel Jones improves. I think that's not crazy. Like, that's not impossible that happens. I think the craziest thing to happen out of those is that Daniel Jones improves. And even that doesn't seem out of the park, but it just, you can kind of do it with any team, which is why I'm a little bit lower on them.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, if their receivers are healthy and playing up to their potential, Jones by default probably looks better, even if he's not a better quarterback. So
sure.
Certainly. I think all of that could go together to a better offense. But like I said, it's all theoretical now, so we don't actually know if this is actually going to be better. So I think 27th is fair with the room to grow.
Yeah. I think the worst part about this Giants team is going to be the coverage unit. Really, I have some concerns about corner in particular. I like Adoree Jackson. He's shown some nice things, but outside of that, Aaron Robinson, who was, a 2021 third rounder who really didn't show much in his 250 snaps. You also have Darnay Holmes, who was a 2020 fourth rounder who was not great in a small sample size. Don't really know who's going to end up filling out that cornerback room. There's still time in the offseason. That remains to be said for all these teams. But as of right now, that's looking a bit tough. Safety is a little bit better. Xavier McKinney is very good, but he's kind of holding this. I think him and Adoree Jackson are holding the secondary together. Julian Love and fourth rounder they just drafted, Dane Belton, are kind of the other guys. I'm not sure how confident I feel in those guys. Hey, mid-round safeties tend to work out sometimes, so it's not out of the question. Also, for linebackers, Blake Martinez and Tay Crowder, I'm not sure are going to move the needle too much coverage-wise. This is a tier 5 coverage unit for me.
Yeah, I mean, football is a weak link sport. You know, it doesn't matter if you have superstars, if they're, if there's terrible players around him. I mean, we saw. It's just that if you have 2/4 of a coverage unit, you don't have a coverage unit.
Right.
And like you said, even if you like McKinney and the best of Adoree Jackson, which I still think he can be a little inconsistent sometimes, is my
That's
only
fair.
worry.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, when you have 2/4 of a coverage unit, you don't have a coverage unit because they're going to be making up for the other two guys. I think that's going to be a problem. I agree with everything you said. And then, guys like Martinez have never really been coverage linebackers. Even if I thought he looked better last season, I still don't think he's that kind of guy.
Yeah, I think so as well. And then to round out the defense with the front seven. So again, nice thing with Blake Martinez though is he does get tackles. Can't take that away from him. He will rack up tackles. Interior defensive line with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams in the front is very good. Kayvon Thibodeau I think should come in right away and play well. With also as the edge with Azeez Ojulari who can potentially grow and get better. Quincy Roche, another guy. You also have Jihad Ward to round up the edges. You also have, Justin Ellis, a 5th-round pick, DJ Davidson. So there's guys who can play here in this. I'm giving it a tier 3 run defense grade and a tier 2 pass rush. I like Thibodeau a lot. And Lawrence and Williams are guys who can pass rush from the inside. So that's kind of what's interesting about the pass rush unit. So those guys are solid. Still not enough to entirely move the needle, especially with the bad coverage, which is where most of that most of the wins in the defense is going to come from, which is also very fluky. And, trying to predict coverage is hard. But I have them as the 27th ranked defense, which puts them at 4.16 total wins, 30th in football, 15th in the NFC, according to my projections.
All right. I'd probably predict them a little more. I probably wouldn't go higher than like 6, so I'm not going to nitpick too much. But at the same time, and a lot of that has to do with, like I said, easiest schedule in football. I feel like there are wins on the board for them. I mean, this pass rush group is probably its strength, where you got guys like I think Williams is a little overpaid, but at the same time, I think he's a solid football player.
Yeah.
I think Ojulari showed promise, and I think he's going to get better. I really like Thibodeau out of the draft. I think that's just those 3 guys right there as a pass rushing group is a really nice unit. Never mind with Lawrence there too. They're going to have a huge burden on their hands though, because they're going to have to, get after quarterbacks for this coverage unit to look decent. So I think that this is going to be I think it's a tough job for them, but I think that they have talent there definitely.
Yeah. So I guess just to wrap up the Giants, I still think this is the rebuilding year. I think that you're trying to see what you have in certain players. There is the potential for this to do a lot better, but I think the potential for this to really be a serious contender in the NFC feels virtually zero. I think that I would be stunned if this is the team that is in the conference championship game.
Definitely that. Like, I think if everything goes right, they maybe win the division. And that's with like the receivers improving, Saquon having a bounce back season, and Jones looking competent at the position. I think it wouldn't be crazy that they win the division, but that's basically my ceiling. I don't see this team going on a playoff run or anything like that. The question I have is like, so if this starts to go south fast, how quickly do you look into bottoming out? Because I mean, you're not a draft guy until the few months before the draft. There's 2 guys who are going to go top 2 in the draft at quarterback. And so if you're looking at one of those 2 guys, not that I love endorsing tanking or anything like that, but it's something you probably have to consider if you're a Giants front office personnel coaching staff. If you want to try and get into that position to get one of those guys, how quickly do you start looking for that situation?
Quite frankly, I think you should always be looking into it. I think it should already be something in your mindset. I mean, getting a quarterback, an elite quarterback, is so important. If you believe in one of these guys that's going to come out, like I think you should already be considering it. Yeah,
I think I agree too. I don't love tanking, but at the same time, I get why teams do it, so I can't really fault it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's completely understandable. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this team. Like I said, I think best case scenario, things could kind of work out in their favor and they're competitive, but I think it's asking a lot of things to go right that might not go right.
Yeah. Let's move on. Who's going to finish 3rd in this division, according to Kyle?
Let's keep it somewhat chalky. I think this team has upside, but I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders, formerly the Balls.
Hey, there's still the balls on the banner here. I am not changing it yet. Although I did write Washington in front of it because I figured some people are going to directly go to their team, and people might be confused about who are the balls. Just for the new people, I did write Washington there, along with still keeping the balls in the name.
The ball is forever.
Hmm.
So I mean, there's still upside with this team. I still think it's got an awesome defensive line. I think the secondary, I think, should be better. And you know what? Is Carson Wentz a perfect quarterback? No, but I think he's competent enough to make things work. So, and that's what they didn't have. They didn't have competency at quarterback, and I thought it really hurt. So, I think that it should be better for this group, and I still think there's upside here. I think I just like the top two teams a little bit more, so I got them at third.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, posted a poll on the community tab here on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, asking the audience of Jackson Cougar Sports, who do you think will win the division? The Giants were in fifth place. The Balls/Commanders are finished in 11, not fifth place, fourth place with 5%. The Washington Balls, third place with 11%. So, you and the community are in lockstep here. As always, it starts with the two guys at the top. Ron Rivera, head coach, he was 15th on my rankings, so get a slight upgrade with Ron Rivera because you get 0.05 wins for Ron Rivera. So there you go. And then Carson Wentz at 21st. He just made the tier 3 quarterback rankings, which, like, listen, I don't think the Carson Wentz contract is ever going to result in a Super Bowl win. I do think it could result in a playoff berth. And I think that, like, it does help the team win games, and it's better than going into a season with Taylor Heineke. It's just probably not going to end up having you host the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah.
Or
I
hoist
think,
it. Sorry.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that I think it should be better, but that's the question is how much better is it going to be?
Mhm.
We saw the Colts take this chance with wins last year. There was some good and obviously bad towards the end of the season,
Mhm.
specifically the last game. Um, and they just got to avoid that. The good news that Wentz is going to have with this team is is this the best wide receiver room he's ever played with?
I think I would put his Super Bowl winning team ahead of this one, but it's very good. So just to
Yeah.
reiterate what it is, you have Terry McLaurin, he's a true number one. There's no denying that. And I think Curtis Samuel, when healthy, is a true number two. We didn't get to see him last year, but that much or at all. I can't remember. We might have played a little. I'm trying to remember, but him back could help a lot. Your guy, Jahan Dotson, who they drafted, could be a big. At least the nice thing about him is he doesn't have to be a number 1 or 2. He can be a number 3 behind Samuel, behind McLaurin. Logan Thomas is a good third option as well at a tight end position. He could be a fourth option. Dimey Brown and Cam Sims can at least make good depth, if nothing else. So this is a tier 2 wide receiving core for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And, if Thomas can stay healthy, I think that's big for tight end. I don't know what it is about Washington and tight ends, but it seems like they're never healthy.
Uh-huh.
I think Thomas has a lot of talent, though, and I think that's upside there. Dotson, like you said, I think I think this is a good situation for him to be that number 3 guy. I think he's going to be able to work well in the slot. And you know what? I thought it was a smart draft pick, too, because wide receiver is an important position nowadays. And I think prioritizing having 2 or 3 options or 3 or 4 options, obviously over just 2 is really important. We saw it with a lot of teams, especially at the top last season. They're stacking up those receivers. It'll be interesting to see how this McLaurin contract thing works out, but it sounds like he's going to play this year. And yeah, I'm excited for this group.
Yeah. Is anyone who plays at least 8 games a year on FedEx Field really healthy? I feel like, maybe it's not a tight end Washington thing. Maybe it's just, hey, you've played on the worst field ever created.
It might be. I don't know. I mean, the fans aren't even safe there. So, I mean, who knows at this point?
Yeah, really. And people being near Dan Snyder aren't safe either, but that's, conversation for another podcast. Let's move on to the offensive line. A good offensive line here as well. We got some good offensive lines in this division. Samuel Cosme, who was a second-round pick in 2021 and played well last year. You also have Charles Leno Sr., who's been a consistent tackle for, really the past 5 years or so. Kind of one of those guys who is sort of a veteran who can just hire and, you can just sign and he'll be solid for you. You also, the guards are interesting. You got a couple of guys who have shown flashes, although they haven't quite been exactly the same as of late, but have still been solid in Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner. Turner from the Steelers, formerly of the Panthers, and then Norwell, who most recently was with the Jaguars. So that's interesting. We'll see how that goes. That could be really good for them. And a pretty high floor as well. Also, Chase Roulier. Names are never going to be my thing. This is one of the worst things about these previews. Is trying to pronounce everyone's name, but he's a very good center as well. This is a tier 2 offensive line for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think everything's really good. Like you said, the guards, I think, are the biggest question, but I think it should work out. And I think they got nice depth too. So I think there's plenty of options here. Um, I think it's a solid offense. I think across the board, you think, like you said, there's a couple tier twos in there. That I think you have to feel good about that.
Yeah. On top of this, just to round out the offense, halfbacks, I'm giving tier 4 with Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, and Brian Robinson, their third rounder. All guys I like. No, none of them I love, though. I'm not sure if any of those guys are top 20 halfbacks, so it's still tier 4 for me, but it shouldn't be a disaster, which puts their offense, I actually have their offense tied for 5th best in football here with 6.51 expected wins.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole sum looks solid. I don't think it'll end up the 5th best offense in football just because I don't think a Carson Wentz led offense will end up in the top 5. But at the same time, you look across the roster and there's not a lot of weaknesses on this group at all. And I think I like Gibson a little bit more than you. And I think across this board, like I like Robinson. I like Jared Patterson as their 4th running back too. I think there's pretty good players across this roster.
Yeah, and big part of this too is like, okay, obviously not all 10 quarterbacks who are in tier 3 are the exact same. And, Carson Wentz being the 10th best out of those 10, like, he probably will be a little bit worse than those other 9, which will bring him down a little bit. But in another part of it too is like the top 4 were like significantly higher than like 5 through like 10. So that's also kind of what happened there. But still, I think it's an underrated offense.
I think so too. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And the defense, I think, is solid as well. So starting off with coverage, you have, again, the cornerbacks. I think William Jackson is going to be a real key to this team. Can we see William Jackson bounce back? Defensive backs are so fluky. Who knows? They're such an important position, but nobody can ever figure out who's good and who isn't. Seems like, year in, year out, it's so different. But he wasn't great last year, has been great in the past. What will happen there? Kendall Fuller was great last year. You also have Danny Johnson, who should be a solid number 3, and Benjamin St-Juste, who's mostly just depth. Safeties are also solid with Cameron Curl, Bobby McCann, and they even drafted someone in the 4th round in Percy Butler, along with Cole Holcomb and Jamon Davis. Coverage at the linebacking position has to get better, but this is I still have it as a tier 3 coverage unit. It was disappointing last year, did show some flashes. I'm going to hope that it kind of starts to regress back, or progress back to where it's supposed to be. But that's definitely an interesting question mark here.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to be interested about in this group. Like you said, Jackson has to be better. He was paid the contract that he was to be much better than he was last season. And if that's good, then all of a sudden 2 really good cornerbacks on this team. St-Juste was the guy I really liked too out of the draft. He's just a ton of length. And then you're hoping Davis with the middle linebacker spot. That's usually a position that takes a year or 2 to kind of get under your feet, especially in the coverage aspect. And I think the hope is he's better in coverage this season because they really need him to be better in coverage. Like you said, that was probably the biggest weakness of this group last year and really hurt this team, I thought, in some big games, was just this linebacker's inability to cover the middle of the field. I think that'll be huge for this team this season if he's better.
Yeah, to round out the defense, as you said, Holcomb and Davis and what they can do. Davis did do, I think, a solid job in the run defense. Needs to just be a little bit more patient, I think, really what it comes down to. Interior is good. Jonathan Allen, Darren Payne. You also have Fender and Mathis, who was a 2022 second rounder. Also, the young edge rushers who have been very good in Montez Sweat and Chase Young on top of this. And you got some depth with James Smith-Williams and Chasey Hill to round out the edge rushers, but really it's Young and Sweat's spots there. It's a tier 2 run defense and a tier 2 pass rush for me. I think a lot to like about this stuff. They are the 13th best defense according to me, which puts them at the 15th best overall team according to me, which would be 7th in the NFC and the 3rd wild card team with 10.74 wins. I do have the Balls as a playoff team. Joey Sly gets them no points, tier 5 kicker. But other than that, I think a team that's pretty consistent all around.
Yeah, it looks like a solid team top to bottom. Like I said, I like their depth. This defensive line is awesome for me. I think it's going to get even better as this team continues to get older because it's, still a lot of young guys too. So I really like this group. I really like everything about this team. I think that I guess the one thing is it's just kind of waiting for some of these guys to turn into real stars. It feels like, right? Like McLaurin's probably the closest thing to that, but if like Yum makes the leap to like defensive player of the year conversation, Sweat makes the leap to like kind of that Pro Bowl conversation consistently, week in, week out, and then maybe Jackson bounces back to his normal form. I think then you're looking at a really, really good football team. It's just looking for those guys to really kind of turn into stars and reach their potential.
Yeah, I think so as well. I also think like, how does this team how does this team end up in the conference championship? I think that's where things get hard. It's like a lot of this stuff looks like they're complete in a lot of different areas, but really what it would have to probably be would be William Jackson goes back to his, what we've seen him at his best. And like you said, like some of the young guys really go get very good. And I guess the other thing would be if Carson Wentz, finally regains the MVP form, which I've given up on hoping, but I guess there's always a chance.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. It's just going to be interesting to see because, I mean, yeah, it's just like a stark contrast to some of these teams in the division where it's like, I think it's a really good roster, but just missing those stars where we see other teams with stars, but missing a lot of things in the roster as we're going to get to here soon. So yeah,
Who could you be referring to there?
Yeah, exactly. Literally with the stars. So yeah, I mean, I think there's reason for optimism in the balls. We'll see how it goes. Because I think this was a team we were both pretty high on last season, and it kind of stung both of us. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can overcome that this year.
Yeah, it's funny because I had them as a playoff team last year. I think around the same spot, around like 10 wins as a sort of a fringe playoff team. Didn't go out there too well there, but I still kind of think that the roster is pretty complete. We'll see if it works out. So two teams, just to give the poll. The poll had 28% saying the Cowboys would win the NFC East, with a majority, 56%, said the Eagles would win the NFC East. Do you agree with the poll? Who do you have at number 2 here?
I'm flipping this late just because there's one team that I want to pick to win the division, even though I'm not I don't think it's as talented, but I want to pick them to win the division. So I'm taking the Cowboys at 2.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, there's still things to like about this team a lot. I mean, obviously you got, I think, a very good starter in Dak Prescott. Maybe not a great starter, but a very good starter. They did lose some pieces on this offense, but CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Dalton Schultz, that's a good pass catching group. Even though I don't love Ezekiel Elliott in his contract, Tony Pollard is a solid backup. And then across the board, you're like, okay, pretty good player. And then the star power on this team is just insane, where it's just like, okay, you can see a couple of these guys on this defense taking over games. You can see a couple of guys in this offense taking over games. And that's where this team's path to winning the division and potentially making a run to an NFC championship game, I think, possible, is just because they have stars at turns. And that's the big thing they have going for them.
Yeah, yes, Kyle. Okay, this is my hot take. The Dallas Cowboys are the 2021 Miami Dolphins. This is my concern with the. I guess I have concerns about the Dallas Cowboys and their depth in particular. Yeah. We'll get into it. We'll talk about all of it. I think we're going to disagree on this, and that makes for good podcasting, which is good. But we'll start at the top. Dak Prescott is a tier 3 quarterback. I had him at 14th. So, and again, this is part of where, okay, obviously Dak Prescott is better than Carson Wentz. So, them being in the same tier is kind of weird. But at the same time, those positions typically don't add a ton of value. There's some more value there. Also, Mike McCarthy was my 30th ranked head coach. So, that hurts them a little.
Yeah. I don't mind Prescott at 14th. I think I had him a little bit higher when we did it, and I think that's kind of how the draft played out. I think he's in that frame. He's, to me, in that tier with, the Cousins, Carr, Tannehill, that group. Now, if you have him at the bottom, I guess he probably ranks out as a tier 3 quarterback. If you have him at the top, he's probably ranked out as a tier 2 quarterback. So it really just kind of depends on where you rank him among those guys. But I think he's in that group. Obviously, I think it was 2 years ago I had him as the 7th best quarterback in football. It just doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. Even though he's putting up yards in this offense and it works for him, I just don't know if he's ever going to have that level of quarterback play.
Yeah, for Prescott, it seems like he goes when the offense goes. He is one. Obviously, every quarterback is going to get better when you're in a better situation. But it seems like he is kind of the, and he's the exact kind of guy you'd point to when you say gets better when the offense is better, gets worse when the offense is worse. The nice thing is there is some solid stuff about this offense. I have it as a tier 1 offensive line with Tyron Smith, who is, he played over 800 snaps last year. So can he be on the field? Well, he was on the field a good amount last year and was fantastic when he was there. Connor McGovern and Terrence Steele to be the other tackle. Maybe that's probably the weakness spot. And also maybe Tyler Smith, who was a first-round pick, but will he be able to step in right away? But with Zach Martin, who's also just elite, so you have two elite guys, and then Tyler Badaz, who should be a solid center as well. Center names are just impossible to pronounce. I had this as a tier 1 offensive line because I feel like they have depth as well on top of this, and their bad positions shouldn't be horrible, and they have some really good offensive linemen here as well.
Yeah, I think they need the rookie to really work out, which, you draft a rookie in the first round because you think he's going to be good. But I feel like, it's been hit or miss the past few years with offensive linemen. So I think that's a big thing. I think Steele's solid enough. Obviously, he's not Lyle Collins, but I think he's still good. And like you said, this group had depth problems, I thought, in years past. You let a guy like Collins go because you need to kind of fill in those depth pieces. And I feel like they have that a little bit more. So, like, if a Tyler Smith struggles, I think they have the room to take him out and put a Connor McGovern in or a thing like that. So I think it still works out for them.
Yeah. The weapons are interesting. So for the halfbacks, I have it as tier 3. Tony Pollard, if I knew he'd be the starter, I might bump him up to tier 2. He probably should be the starter, but Ezekiel Elliott's the one who gets the touches, who hasn't been as good these past few years, and I'm not going to count on that getting better. For running backs, what have you done for me lately? So that's tier 3. Wide receiving core, also tier 3 for me. CeeDee Lamb has shown he's a fantastic number 2. Can he be a number 1? That's a question. Michael Gallup has shown he's a fantastic number 3. Can he be a number 2? That remains to be a question. Drafted Jalen Tolbert in 3rd round. You also have James Washington, who's, in my opinion, depth and nothing more. Dalton Schultz is good, but there's a lot of good receiving cores. This is at the top of the tier 3, but this is still tier 3 for me for the Dallas wide receiving core.
I think I agree because I think it's theoretical still, but I mean, I really like CeeDee Lamb, and I think he's going to project out as a number 1 receiver. And I think now that he's given the opportunity, he will be. But yeah, I mean, I still think it's a little bit theoretical of can these guys step up? I feel like we've been waiting for James Washington to be good for a few years now. I like Schultz, so I think there's upside, like you said, to bump this into a tier 2. But I think we need to see it first before we can grade it. I think that's all right on the offense, though.
Yeah, so I have the offense. It's still a solid offense, 13th best with 5.76 or 5.79 wins for the offense. So they're only they're within a win of the Washington offense, even though there's a big jump in placement there. It's a solid offense, and I like the pass rush as well. To transition right there, obviously everyone likes the pass rush. You got Micah Parsons, you got DeMarcus Lawrence, and you even have some other guys who I think could do well. They have depth at the edge rush position. Dante Fowler Jr., Dorrance Armstrong. They have Sam Williams, who was a 2nd-round pick, who has a good pass rush analytics, not really run defense, but we're talking pass rush right now. Terrell Basham could be another good depth guy. And then the interior defensive line, going to just try to run down some of the names real quick, with Carlos Watkins and Chauncey Goldson, who are, both all right. Osa Idewigza, Osa, who, again, really mostly depth and nothing else. Same thing with Tristan Hill and Neville Gallimore, but again, got through it. We've made it through all those names. I like the pass rush, tier 2 pass rush for me. Don't love the interior enough to put it up to tier 1, and plus how much snaps will Micah Parsons get at pass rush? That hurts it a little bit, but there's still depth at the edge rush position. Lawrence will still be good. It's a tier 2 pass rush for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think Basham will probably take over for Fowler. I'm not a huge Fowler fan, Dante Fowler, but at the same time, when you strike out on your first 2 defensive ends in free agency, I don't think he's a bad 3rd option because they missed out on bringing back what's his face, Randy Gregory, and then they missed out on Von Miller, so they kind of went to Fowler. I don't think it's terrible. I think Basham, like I said, will eventually take that spot. But yeah, I mean, this group is Lawrence and Parsons are gonna rack up a ton of pressures, I think, rack up a ton of sacks. And then, I mean, we can get more into the Parsons thing here. So if he develops into this complete linebacker, what is the best case for him? Do you want him to be this jack of all trades player? Do you want him to be the elite pass rusher he is? How do they handle this Parsons development? And how do they deploy this weapon on defense to where, I mean, there's real, defensive player of the year potential, multiple time defensive player of the year potential with this guy.
Oh yeah, I mean he was in the conversation last year. So Micah Parsons, I think with him in particular, I want them to use him how they've used him. I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job with him. Let him do different things because when you do different things, as long as you're getting used properly and you're getting put in the right situation, you just have better personnel on the field for specific coverages and for specific plays, even if it's the same person. So I think exactly the way they're doing it. And yeah, you hope his coverage gets a little better. It was still fine last year, but you hope it gets better. And that would be probably enough to, I think just use them the same way.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think things are just going to naturally get better as he gets older and sees more reps. There's a lot of optimism here with this group.
Yeah. Speaking about the front, this is where things start to get off the rails for the Cowboys, really. With Leighton Vander Esch, I think is fine. Maybe hasn't lived up to that hype that he had after his rookie year. Again, already talked about Micah Parsons, Jabril Cox, a fourth rounder last year, who I thought maybe has potential. We haven't seen much from him, but as I mentioned, that kind of weak interior defensive front concerns me. This is a tier 5 run defense. I have real concerns about this interior and how they will be able to stop the run.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And they've already lost one linebacker to the season. They lost Bond and OTAs. So I know Van Der Esch ended up playing 17 games last season, but I still have questions about, durability there. So yeah, I mean, I think, if Van Der Esch is going down, even though I don't think he's as good as, like you said, he was hyped to begin with, if he ends up going down again, I like Cox, but how do the rest of these guys that's a good soundbite. I like Jabril Cox, but at the same time, as you go down the rest of this list, if a guy like Van Der Esch goes out, how does this roster work at the interior position?
Yeah, someone just edit out that clip that you said right there. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, that's a concern for me certainly, and I have more concerns. I have the concerns with this coverage unit. Listen, they have All-Pro Trayvon Diggs, who we've talked about this to death. Guy who gets a lot of big plays. Also gave up the most yards in football last year. So only guy to give up over 1,000 yards last year. That's a concern. And I don't know. I guess I just don't know what to make of Trayvon Diggs. Is he going to be this great player? Is he not? Like that's a huge question mark. And if he is an All-Pro corner, I think this team looks a lot better. But I'm not willing to bet on it necessarily. And I also think I have some concerns about just the rest of their cornerback room. You have Anthony Brown, who's fine, but he's not spectacular. And then it's, Kelvin Joseph, a second rounder who only played 138 snaps last year. You have a fifth rounder, Deron Bland, who might end up getting some playing time. Safety position is good. Malik Hooker is good. Jalen Kearse is good. And Donovan Wilson is solid. So the safeties I don't have an issue with, but the corner and corner depth in particular, even if Diggs is awesome, there's still some depth issues here. I have it as a tier 4 coverage unit because I do like the safeties and I do like some of what Diggs brings. I think their linebackers should be fine, but I can't put this better than tier 4. And coverage is, there's a lot of wins in the coverage unit. There's over 4 wins potentially for the coverage unit, and they're not getting many with the tier 4.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that defensive back can be a fluky position. If Diggs has like 3 picks next year as opposed to 11, I mean, we're talking about serious problems at this position, right?
Yeah, well, and that's kind of why I made the Miami Dolphins comparison, where it's like the Cowboys got so many turnovers last year. I just don't know if we can bank on that again. And if those turnovers dry up, which I would probably expect to happen, I think this defense looks a lot worse.
I think I agree. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all this. I mean, they still have guys like Lawrence, who I think are great. And they still have guys like Parsons, who I think could win Defensive Player of the Year, like I said. But you're expecting a lot to kind of work out the same way that it did. I don't think it's necessarily fair to just assume that's going to happen, especially, I mean, listen, the Dolphins did it again last season, but the statistics on turnover luck are still heavily skewed to it's a luck-based statistic. And it's not likely to happen multiple years in a row. And so if this goes the other way on them, I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, we have a super chat from Zachary Stewart saying, Fred Durst, Dan Quinn, was good at player development last year, so maybe he can develop these corners. That's fair. That is true. He has shown that he can be a good developmental guy. And listen, I was wrong about the Cowboys last year. I didn't have them make the playoffs last year, and they did. So maybe this is just a blind spot for me. But I have this defense as 23rd in football. Also, an undrafted free agent kicker in Jonathan Garibay. That is a tier 5 kicker for me as well. So kicking needs to work, get better in the NFC East. But I have him at 6.71 total wins. That is 24th in football, 10th in the NFC. If I had to bet, I'd probably bet on them overperforming my algorithm of 6.71. But I do think this is going to be a disappointing season for Cowboys fans.
Yeah. I think there's very well a possibility for it. I still think they're going to be okay because I just think parts of this group are, the offense is going to be a top 10 offense in the league. I just think it's going to happen. I think that this defense is going to have enough big splash plays, even though I don't think they'll have the number of turnovers that they did last season. I still think there's another number of big splash plays as far as the sack goes, as far as the pressure goes, that they'll be able to make it work. And then, it's going to be interesting to see how they start the season because, you're going with Tampa Bay to start the season, Cincinnati to the second week. The Giants should be a win, but then you got Washington, which is a big division game, at Los Angeles, and then another big division game at Philadelphia. That's a tough schedule to start the year.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Over under on 0.5 quarterback draws the Cowboys run next year.
I would say under with less than 15 seconds in the game, and they need to get 30 yards to get in field goal range.
Mm-hmm. How great would it be if they did it again and it worked? That Mike McCarthy he'd be talking about that decades from now.
Yeah, he would make sure everybody remembers that.
Yeah, Nicholas Gill says he has the Cowboys finishing 7-10. So me and Nicholas Gill in lockstep.
So just to clarify, you have the Giants around 5 wins, just under 5 wins. Mm-hmm. You have the Cowboys just over 6 wins. And then you have the Commandos at 10 and a half wins.
Yeah, so the Giants are at 4.16, so just barely over 4. The Cowboys at 6.71, and then let me pull up the balls here real quick. I never know what to put them in my notes, so I put balls, but that's always just behind the scenes frustrating thing for me. 10.74 wins for the balls. So that is where I have those 3 teams.
All right. So I don't know if this team's then going to end up. I think I know who's going to win your division based on that. But that being said, I'm going to stick with my thing here. I'm picking the Philadelphia Eagles to win this division. I thought they made clear roster upgrades throughout this offseason. I thought they did a very good job making this team better. And once again, so all of these teams in the NFC East kind of have easy schedules because they play each other and they play the Giants twice. But once again, the Eagles have, according to Sharp Analytics, they have the second easiest schedule in football behind only the Giants. And that starts off right away at the beginning of the season where they got, games at Detroit to open the season. They're home against Minnesota, which will be tough, but they also got Jacksonville on the schedule. There's winnable games here. They got a schedule that kind of caters to their favor. There's going to be an interesting season for the Eagles because I thought, it was kind of playing with house money last year because there was no expectations. And now I feel like there's going to be a lot of expectations for this team. How do they respond?
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Let's get into it. Starting at the top, I think the biggest expectations start with those 2 guys, Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, who I had as 18th, both respectively. So that's tier 3 for Jalen Hurts and then 18th for Ciriani. So he actually loses a 10th of a win being 18th, but I could easily see him improving from there. There's a lot of good coaches. He's shown that he's at least a solid one right away. I think Jalen Hurts, that's the big question of what do we have from Hurts. But I think at least he has a low, or at least he has a high floor, which I like.
I think he has a high floor. Great fantasy option too if you're interested in that stuff.
There you go.
Yeah, so if you go through this, it's going to be interesting because I really liked what Sirianni did to end the season. I thought he really, kind of improved week by week. That's something I really like out of coaches when they learn through mistakes. I really liked what he did with this team. I thought he was one of the more impressive rookie head coaches, even if he didn't get all the praise. And this kind of feels like a make or break year for Jalen Hurts too, even if it might be a little unfair in just his second full season as a starter, because you look across this offense and you're going to get into it here. There's no excuse not to be pretty good with this offense, at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a good segue into what this offense is. I think kind of maybe the weak spot is the running backs, but the running backs are still solid with Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, who are all solid players. I have that as tier 4 just because, again, are any of those guys a top 20 back? To me, no, but they're all still solid. So I still got it as tier 4. But the real, the highlights of this offense is the offensive line and receiving core, which are really what matter more. Receiving core, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, though that's as good of a 1-2 as you're going to see in the NFL. Only a couple have better than that. And even like Quez Watkins brings something to an offense. Zach Pascal and Jalen Rager, I'm not going to hold my breath on, but Dallas Goedert is very good as well. This is a tier 2 wide receiving core for me. It was actually 6th best. Only the top 5 make tier 1, so that's how close it was to being tier 1. The offensive line isn't just tier 1; it's number 1 in football for me. This is the fantastic offensive line. Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson for the tackles, Landon Dickerson, who played guard last year and played it well, with Jason Kelce being remaining on at center and doing good stuff there. You also have Isaac Somalo, who has been a solid guard as well. He's probably the weak spot, but he's still solid. So this offensive line, we'll talk about their defense as well. Eagles love their linemen, and offensive line is fantastic. A lot to like about this offense. I have it as the 7th best offense in football with 6.4 wins. So it's right there with the Balls. It's only a little bit below them. Really good offense.
Yeah, so just hitting on a few quick points here. This is a fantastic offensive line. I think what's most impressive, too, is we really liked this offensive line like 2 years ago, too. Then it looked really old really fast, and then they kind of plugged it in and kept going almost immediately. It's really impressive how they continue to plug and play with this offensive line, and just been good, I thought, for a number of years. Your running backs thing, I think I agree with the tier 4 thing, but I do want to clarify, too, Eagles, number 1 running team in football last year, 2,715 yards on the ground. That's well over 100 yards to the second best team, too. They were 4th in yards per attempt at 4.9 and 1st in rushing touchdowns. Part of that, too, is having Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, which is a tier 1 running quarterback. But at the same time, maybe not a superstar in that running back room, but they run the ball very well, and that's something that they improved on throughout the year. And then completely agree, receivers are very good. Goddard is one of the best tight ends in football. You got Smith, who showed a lot of promise after his rookie season, and then AJ Brown, of course, bringing him in. That's your true number 1 guy. That's a really good group, those 3. Quarterback's the biggest question on this offense. That's what it is to me, is how does this work with this quarterback? How does Hurts continue to develop? There are some things, Troy Aikman was ready to get out of his seat and go play for the Eagles of all teams. He was so pissed off during that playoff game. If he can improve, this is going to be a really good group that it could, I think, not only, you said 7th, if he can improve, I think this is bordering top 5, 4, 3 offense in football. It's a complete group.
Yeah, if Jalen Hurts would be a tier 1 quarterback next year, this could be the best offense in football. Like, that's how loaded this team is.
If he's, if he can work his way into that, as I said earlier, that Tannehill, Carr, Dak, Cousins group, if he's in that group as a fringe 2 or 3 guy, I think this is one of the best offenses in football. I really think that.
Yeah, and the defense is not too shabby either. I have this as the best run defense in football on top of that. With, so many options in this defensive line, right? Brandon Graham, edge rusher, who, broke your heart on a specific Super Bowl, Kyle. He had the strip sack fumble, on Tom Brady in, that Super Bowl. You also have Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick on the edge, not to mention Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, and you drafted Jordan Davis on top of that for the interior. And then TJ Edwards and Kazir White are very good linebackers as well. This is a team it's gonna stop the run. You're not gonna get much. I still have it as a tier 2 pass rush, just because who of those edge rushers is elite? Not really any of them. They're all good, but none of them are elite, I don't think. Maybe Brandon Graham, but Brandon Graham 2 years ago, sure. I'm not sure about this year. But still, a lot of options. Tier 2 pass rush, tier 1 run defense for me.
Yeah, Reddick might be their best pass rusher.
He's very good.
Yeah, there's depth on this group too. I really like their draft picks. Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean, I think, are going to be fascinating on this defense too. They're in positions that historically take a little bit of time, but Jordan Davis is going to take up space if anything. That's just, Ezekiel Elliott's just going to run into him and fall over for 20 carries that he gets in that Cowboys game. You got that soundbite earlier that says I like Cox. It's that I love Flock Cox when it's Fletcher Cox. That guy. That's one of the guys I just have adored watching over the years. Fletcher Cox is fantastic. You go through this group. You can go too deep on the defensive line and the linebacker group and like all of these players. That's how good I feel like this group is top to bottom. I really like this front 7.
Yeah, and the thing about Davis as well is like, so my concern about Jordan Davis was I felt like he's sort of a one-trick pony who is great at that one trick. Well, it's like if that's all he is, like that's still a very valuable asset for the Philadelphia Eagles, who don't need
Mhm.
him to be, this Vita Vea right off the bat, like he got some comparisons to.
Yeah, he's going to be playing with pretty good defensive tackles no matter who's next to him anytime he's on the field.
Hmm.
And I think it's just a fantastic it's a really good draft pick for them. And like I said, with those defensive tackles, when you have guys like Hargrave, Cox, and Davis in the middle of that defense, that's kind of the thing that makes N'Kobe Dean successful in college is that he could kind of just see everything because you
Hmm.
view him as kind of that short linebacker. If he has a group ahead of him, I think he should really thrive in this defense too.
Yeah, and to round out the defense with the coverage unit, we already mentioned Edwards, White, and Dean as the linebackers, and then the safeties. You have Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, and Jaquiski Tart, who's solid, should be a good three for them. So safeties are good. Corners should be good. I mean, you got some veterans here, and I guess that's the only concern with Darius Slay, who's played good, but again, what are we going to see from Darius Slay? James Bradbury, I think similar thing. I think he should fit well in this scheme, but like, what are we going to see from him? Do like Avonte Max as well. So I like this coverage unit. I'm going to give it tier 3 for me, but this could easily jump up to better than tier 3 as well. I like this defense. I have it as the 10th best in football, which means I have the Eagles as a whole, the 14th best team in the league, the 6th best team in the NFC, and the best team in the NFC East with 11.17 total wins.
All right. So barely sneaking out over the Commandos and Chiefs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, so this secondary I think is going to be interesting because it's kind of patched together at this point. Because I mean, Harris was there last year, but I mean, we'll see what exactly he can bring to the table. Tart I think is fine, and then like you said, Bradbury coming into the group. So it's kind of trying to patch together a good secondary. Um, that doesn't always scream success. Um, but I think it could work because I think all of these guys are at least solid to good players. So, like you said, we'll see how the secondary looks. It's not the youngest group, but I think that there's good players here.
Yeah. Also, Jake Elliott, tier 2 kicker. So good work. The kickers are improving there. But yeah, like you said, I think that again, every team could underperform or overperform based on coverage, just because like who knows with coverage? It's such a wild card. And like you look at the teams that I was wrong about last year in terms of this, it was like almost all like I was wrong about the coverage because that's just you could make that same thing with everyone because coverage is just so fluky. Like the Buffalo Bills basically went from a great coverage unit to a horrible coverage unit to a great coverage unit, all while keeping the same guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is the case. So I guess the thing is so what is your roadmap for the Eagles not winning this division?
Well, for them not winning division, it's interesting. So I think the coverage unit probably, showing their age would probably be the number one way. I think if that happens, that would be a big concern because I don't see this. There's too many guys in that front seven for the run defense and pass rush to be bad. There just are. I don't see that happening. Again, anything's possible, but I see that to be a very small chance of happening. I also think that as long as Smith and Brown and Goddard are healthy, or at least two of those guys are healthy, there should be receiving options. They should be able to have a good running game with Hurts healthy. So again, injuries are always something that can derail anyone's team, anyone's season. But taking that out of the equation feels like the biggest way I could see them regressing would be their coverage. Bradbury and Slay showing their age.
I think so too. Yeah, I mean, it would be the secondary kind of crumbles, and I mean, that's not going to be a good kit. That's not going to be good against a team like Dallas, at least. I guess the thing would be for me too is like, so we kind of touched on. I don't want to say, oh well, if your quarterback stinks, because I think a lot of teams say, oh, if your quarterback regresses, it's not going to be
Mm-hmm.
good. But I don't love the situation that Hurts didn't look NFL caliber in that playoff game. Now, granted, he's not going to face the Bucks defense every week, but is this a path where it's kind of like maybe there's now a roadmap to stop this guy and prepare for this guy?
Yeah, because he's not gonna play. You're right. He's not gonna play the Bucks defense every week, but he is gonna, if he makes the playoffs, play a caliber defense like the Bucks at least once or twice during that runs. So if they want to win a Super Bowl, so you're right, they're gonna have to figure something out. And I do think that arm strength matters, and that stuff over the middle matters. And his arm strength wasn't great in that game, and that's kind of my concern. Is like how much better arm strength can you get? Everyone's will like to say, oh, he's been working on arm strength. This player's been working on arm strength. It's like I think everyone works on arm strength. Like if you're an adult at this point, you've been, he went to Alabama. He has been in, NFL rooms for several years now. I'm not going to bank on his arm strength getting that much better.
Yeah, I think I agree. And
Mm-hmm.
at least for the Eagles, though, they have this roster. I think they have a good chance to win the division. And it's a very clear situation of how they get better is they go get a quarterback next season if they feel like they need to. I mean, that's easier said than done, but it does kind of feel like the case with this team. It's about as complete as it gets, I feel like, for the NFC.
Yeah, well, they have the draft capital to do that as well. Or maybe they'll do sort of a Matthew Stafford trade next year. That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I think there's options for them. I think this is a good team, though. I think that they can really compete. Do you see a path for this team making the Super Bowl? Let's go there.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I really think it would have to come down to Jalen Hurts would have to turn into like a top 10 quarterback, which I wouldn't bet on. But I think that would probably be the way to do it. Or I guess maybe if, listen, if James Bradbury and Darius Slay go the other way and are both elite next year, which we've seen them do recently, like now you're adding a couple of wins to this win total. That's like a 13-win team. That's a conference championship team. And if you're there, you can totally win it all. So
yeah,
that would probably be the one other way I could see it happening, which isn't crazy. But again, I'm not sure if I would bet on it.
Yeah, I mean, we still got a long way to go. This was our first division preview. So, you look through it and it's like, okay, obviously, I think it's fair to predict. We're going to go through this over the next few weeks. It's fair to predict the Packers and the Buccaneers and the Rams are probably among the top 3 teams in the NFC. Beyond that, if anyone's going to challenge them, I think the Eagles are a really good candidate to be in that conversation. There's a few other teams I think could also be in that conversation. I guess the question is, do they have the ceiling of those teams? I'm not sure. And I think they're going to need that to win a Super Bowl. We'll see. And like you said, it really comes down to if Hurts can be that guy or if this turns into a super, if Smith develops even further, I think this can turn into easily a tier 1 receiving group, like you said. And then all of a sudden, this is that kind of team.
Yeah. And one thing that's going for them as well is they play in the NFC, which I do have the NFC as weaker. Like I have a team missing the playoffs with more expected wins than what I gave the Eagles. And the Eagles still have over 11. So it's not like there's some scrub team just getting in. So there's some good teams in the AFC in particular. And there's some, high-end teams in the NFC, but you only have to beat 1 or 2 of them instead of having to beat 3 of them like you would in the AFC. So that's maybe the other advantage.
I completely agree. I think there's a lot of questions in the NFC after the top 3 teams, which is kind of like, hey, I think anything's kind of possible. And, I'm not going to, say like, oh, if injuries happen, but at the same time, if one of those guys at the top goes down, I think all of a sudden this conference is wide open.
And I have one other thing that I thought of as well is, so, they got kind of an unfortunate draw when they got Tampa Bay, which like part of it was, hey, you finished 7th, so you're going to get an unfortunate draw. But if they win their division and at least get, 4th place, okay, you're not going to get as, tough of a team. You're going to get a wild card team. And we saw last year with San Francisco being a good running team in the playoffs. Typically the teams that get into the playoffs are teams that throw the ball well and defend the pass well. So then when you have a good running team, that can actually sometimes be a way you can make an unexpected run. So maybe that's your pathway.
Yeah, they just ran into the one team that also defended the run well, so that was a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you unfortunately ran into a team who's, despite having Tom Brady, like their number one focus is being a good run defense.
Yeah, has Vita Vea, so that doesn't work.
Yeah, right. That makes it tough. All right, Kyle, that is our first preview in the books. I love doing these shows. It's a lot of research, a lot of fun. Always a good time. Next week we will be doing the NFC North.
The North, yes, we are heading north.
That is of course the Packers, Lions, Vikings, and Packers, Lions, Vikings, and Bears, of course.
Yeah, I didn't want to think about the Bears either. It's okay.
Yeah, I think it just blocked them out of my brain.
Yeah, so I think a hot take. Any hot takes coming for next week?
Hot takes coming for next week. Maybe a warm one. I don't think no Cowboys winning less than 7 games. But I think there'll be certainly some things to talk about.
I think there'll be things to talk about. I also think it might be the chalkiest division of the NFC. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the division. I'm excited to go through these previews. It's going to be fun. Still got, a little bit of off season left. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Kyle, who do you have winning tonight? Lightning or Avalanche?
I'm not picking the Lightning. Avs.
Okay. I feel okay. I thought that I knew we were going to win game 3 after everyone was convinced that we were going to get swept after game 2. Seeing entire Twitter is never in unison. Seeing into all of Twitter in unison that the Lightning were going to get swept after game 2. I'm like, okay, well, at least we'll win game 3.
Sports social media is the most like reactionary group ever. I mean, you were going to get swept to the Rangers, basically, weren't you? So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I could see this going 2-2. I think it's a much better series than 7-0. I think, I think this Avs team, though, like I said kind of last week, is like when their speed gets going, it's just like I don't care who you got. Victor Hedman's not even going to stop them because it's just like this team when they get going and they're fast, it's just really hard to stop. I think if Tampa Bay can make this a slugfest, I think they got a chance.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I also think, Andre Vasilevsky didn't play his typical performance. Game 2, that was just throw that one out. That's one of those just weird, games where just everything goes wrong. Game 1, he didn't play at his best. I think even game 3, he hasn't played his best. So, Lightning have a huge goaltending advantage, and that's what can win you a series. So, I think it can go either way. Maybe my Bolts in 5 take at the beginning of the series might not. But I also, in slight fairness to me, I thought that the Lightning would have a healthy Braden Point, which hasn't seemed to be the case. But there's still these are good teams. This series is probably going to go 7.
I think so too. The Avs aren't the Canadians who suck. Just have to throw that dig in there. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think you'll be fine. Obviously, you lose this one, then you start to panic.
Yeah, this is when you go down 0-2, I always feel like a series starts. People say the series doesn't start till a team loses at home. That's the dumbest thing in the world. No, of course. Okay, I guess the Bruins series is still going then. It definitely starts before then. But it starts when a team has a chance to win their third game. That's when it's because the difference between 3-1 and 2-2, which is so insurmountable. This is every game from here on out is huge. I told my girlfriend. I think during game 3, it's like I'm not watching another one of these games sober. I can't do it. You have to be drinking during these ones.
Yeah, can't blame you there. You're not going.
I do have tickets to game 6. So yeah, what I did when we went down 0-2, I said, okay, I'm going to buy game 6 tickets, and this way, if we end up getting crushed, then whatever, I get my money back. And I figured the prices are probably going to go up, which they did, although they've dropped back down since then. But my thought was, you know what? I'll do this, and then if we have a chance to win, I'll go. If not, I'll probably just sell them.
Well, there you go. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, should be fun. All right, Kyle, let them know where I can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Cronin. Make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK on Twitter. That's at On the Sideline JK.
Yes, of course. If you like to listen to your podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, On the Sideline podcast, search that. It should be available. Again, thank you to everybody for listening to all of this fun stuff. We do appreciate it. Kyle, how long are we until football season?
We're under 80 days, baby. 78 days till football season. We're ready.
What's great about when we get under 80 days is then people can say like or under 100, I should say. It's like, it'll be like, we're 78 days away. Here is us, 78-yard punt return or something like that. We're back into that season.
Yeah, exactly. Not an Ezekiel at 78-yard run. I don't think that happened last season.
Probably not. Maybe next season.
So, I don't think so.
Man, Cowboys fans are not going to be enjoying this podcast.
Well, you said they're going to win like 4 games, so definitely.
Okay, again, every time I have a hot take, it always goes lower. I said 6.7. No embellishment here.
The 0-17 Dallas Cowboys it's going to be an interesting season.
Yes, should be an interesting season. All right, again, thank you to everybody. We do appreciate it. And until next time, see you later. My voice cracked at the end. That's no good.
Well, run it back. Try it again.
See you later, alligator.
Peace.